I call this meeting to order. Welcome to the 81st meeting of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. We're going to be in hybrid format today with members online, and all of our first panel of guests are present in the room with us, so I'd like to welcome everyone. Everybody has the ability to use the language of your choice. We do have official languages interpretation as well as Inuktitut today. And for those witnesses who are here, we have our team that will turn your microphones on and off, and you just need to choose the language of interpretation on the consoles. We're going to jump right into our first panel. So we have representatives from, well, first of all, Glenn Hare, Ontario Regional Chief, Chiefs of Ontario. Welcome, Glenn. Good to see you. Scott McLeod, Chief of Nipissing First Nation, Chiefs of Ontario. Welcome, Scott. Grand Chief Francis Kavanagh, Grand Council Treaty Number 3. Welcome. And lastly, Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler, Anishinaabe, Aski Nations. Welcome. Who is going to start first? Maybe do you want to go left to right for opening statements, or Mr. Hare, do you want to go first? So we have 5 minutes for the clock, and just before you start, we have to be a bit rigid with somewhat rigid in our time, so we get through all of the material. So I'm going to give a yellow card when it's 30 seconds left in the time that's allotted, and then a red card when the time's up. And just don't stop mid-sentence, but we'll try to wind up the conversation when you get the red card, and we'll move to the next person.
So why speed up? I'm not singing. I'm trying to do every word.
But we also want to say not too fast, because we have our hardworking interpreters who need to be able to keep up.
Okay.
So nice steady pace, and we'll cover lots of material today. So when you're ready, the clock will start, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, good day, everybody. I welcome for the introduction, and welcome to be here with all of us today. I'm Ontario Regional Chief Glenn Hare from Manitoulin Island. Chiefs of Ontario is a First Nations political and advocacy organization that represents 133 First Nations in Ontario region, and I'm proud to hold the office of the Regional Chief. I'm grateful for the opportunity again to speak on Bill C-53 here with us today. As I am sure you all know, there is a high level of interest from First Nations to participate in the study of this bill. That is because of the massive impact we believe Bill 53 will have on First Nations rights. Those rights were given to us by the Creator, and they are very sacred to us. Our primary concern is that the MNO is one of the groups included in this proposed legislation that will be recognized as having Section 35 rights. Our primary concern is that the MNO is one of the groups included. The MNO has been asserting that they have historic Métis communities that completely overlap with our ancestral and treaty territories. Our leadership and elders assert that those communities never existed, or else they would remember them. The MNO is claiming a history on our lands that never happened. If passed, this legislation will set a dangerous precedent, and the MNO will be emboldened to keep asserting land rights and jurisdiction in our territories, in our consultations, and in our agreements. First Nations continue to be left out completely in the dark about the factual and legal basis for the recognition of MNO communities. We were not consulted at all throughout this entire process about the assignment of Aboriginal rights to the group making assertions in our ancestral and treaty territories. This is going to impact our rights, so it's very much our business. We are calling for Bill 53 to be withdrawn and urging parliamentarians to take our concerns seriously and stop this process before further irreparable damage is done. We came to Ottawa twice for peaceful demonstrations opposing the passing of Bill 53 in both June and September of this year. We were joined by hundreds of family and community members, First Nations, youth, elders, knowledge keepers, drummers, dancers, grassroots people, technicians, and First Nation leadership from Ontario, Manitoba, and Quebec, as well as the interim national chief, all there to oppose the passing of this bill. People traveled hours to attend these demonstrations. Our rights are of utmost importance to our people. Second, I know my time is limited, but I think what's really important for this committee to know is that it's not only Ontario First Nations who are opposing the passing of this bill. We have absolutely taken a unified stance in Ontario on this issue. You can see that here today, the Chiefs of Ontario, Anishinaabe Aski, Anishinaabe Nation, Grand Council 3, Treaty 3, and the Associated Iroquois and Allies, the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne Independent, and the unaffiliated First Nations, the Wabanor Tribal Council, Matawa Tribal Council. The Ontario region is very large, and we do not always agree on everything, but this is something we've all come together on because it is so important. But like I said, it's not just us. First Nations across the country are worried about the impacts of this bill. In July, at the Assembly of First Nations, the Annual General Assembly in Halifax, Chiefs in Assembly unanimously passed a resolution titled Protect First Nations Rights and Interests from Unfounded Métis Rights Assertions. First Nations in every province and territory agree this bill cannot pass. We also have received support from the Manitoba Métis Federation, who share our concerns with MNO's claims, stating that Bill 53 rewards Indigenous identity theft. False claims to Indigenous identity isn't just some phenomenon happening in the academic and the arts. This is it right here in action, and it is legislation this House and this government is going to enable these false claims. I see the card went up already, but I would like to close.
Yeah, still 30 seconds left.
Okay,
So
well, I'll use my 30 seconds just to share and echo. It really hurts me as a leader of this province and to sit at the table with federal government and try to move things. The time that I'm given here today, we all has 5 minutes for a lifetime of and what potential we are going to lose. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for those opening comments. And I know that 5 minutes is a pretty rigid and short amount of time to cover so much material. But the point is to allow us to get into a good conversation, and that's what we hope to do. Who would like to go next for this? Okay, so we have Chief McLeod. When you're ready, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Anen kinawea zongabo Indigenous cause bising dunjaba shaga dudem. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chief Scott McLeod of Nipissing First Nation. I'm grateful for the opportunity to appear before you today to speak about Bill C-53. I'm proud to stand here today with our regional chief, grand chiefs, and leadership in the name of protecting First Nations' inherent and treaty-protected rights. I want to echo Regional Chief's comments that First Nations in the Ontario region support the legitimate claims of Indigenous peoples, but note that the recognition of unfounded claims undermine legitimate and inherent rights holders. I am here on behalf of the First Nations of Ontario region to voice our concerns about the Métis Nation of Ontario being recognized as being Section 35 rights holders in Bill C-53. We are calling for Bill C-53 to be withdrawn until there is proper due diligence on the part of Canada to verify who the Métis Nation of Ontario actually represents. The communities represented by the MNO did not exist historically. We have been saying this for decades. The communities did not exist historically. They do not meet the legal criteria set out in Pauli and therefore cannot have Section 35 rights. Section 35 is to protect the rights of Indigenous groups who existed on the land prior to the establishment of Canada. Section 35 is about protecting the rights of pre-existing nations on the land that they occupied. We now have academic research that demonstrates that the so-called MNO historic communities did not exist. In May 2023, Robinson Huron, Wawanamagawin, a treaty-level organization representing the 21 First Nations of the Robinson Huron Treaty, signed the treaty in 1850 and released a report recently titled An Exploratory Study of Métis Nation of Ontario's Historic Communities in the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. The report examined the MNO's own documentation in their verified Métis family lines report. These are public to check if the so-called communities met the criteria set out with Pauli. The MNO is reimagining family lines and manipulating census records to create a history that never happened in our territories. The Supreme Court of Canada has ruled that in order for a Métis community to qualify as having Section 35 rights, it must have their own distinct language, culture, customs, and family descendants living in a given geographic area for multiple generations prior to the effective European control. The findings in this report demonstrate that the MNO Métis root ancestors and their descendants are not recorded in the Métis community prior to effective control. The MNO, so-called Métis root ancestor, are not primarily identified as Métis in the historical records, and many of the Métis root ancestors are never actually identified as Métis in the historical record. I'd like to take a moment to examine the MNO's McLeod-Réal verified Métis line. It provides us with an example of an important regional Anishinaabe family that the MNO has transformed into a Métis family for Killarney. We will focus on the one individual, Gregor McGregor, a Métis root ancestor descendant. And please bear with me. I'll be speaking about the census records, as this is what the MNO uses to form the foundation of its so-called historic communities. Gregor was listed as Scotch and living with his parents and younger sister in 1881 census for Killarney. The four of them are the only ones on the census pages for the Killarney not listed as Indian. 10 years later, in 1891, Gregor was listed with his wife and their two children as French-Canadian in Killarney. The family appears to be living exclusively among the Anishinaabe families again. In 1901, Gregor, Veronique, their four children, and his parents living next door are listed at the Whitefish Reservation on Birch Island, today known as Whitefish River First Nation, as a French breed under color and Chippewa Canadian under racial or tribal origins. They're all recorded as speaking at Anishinaabe along with 5 of the 6 remaining households listed on the census page. 10 years later, again in 1911, Gregor, Veronique, and their now 8 children were listed at the Whitefish River Indian Reserve as Ojibwe and speaking Anishinaabe, along with their 27 other individuals on the same page of the census. 10 years later, in 1921, Gregor, Veronique, and the 5 of their children were once again listed on the Whitefish River Reserve as Ojibwe and speaking Anishinaabe, along with everybody else on the census page. What all of this tells us is that the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of McLeod-Réal Métis root ancestors were all integral members of the regional Anishinaabe communities, and there was no distinct Métis community there. According to public documentation produced in February of 2023, Gregor McGregor and Veronique descendants continue to be significant presence in the Whitefish Indian First Nation, and those with the McGregor last name represent over 16% of its 730 adult citizens we all know today as the McGregors from Whitefish. This is who the MNO is claiming to represent, and they have people signing up to members today who will benefit from Section 35 rights based on being a descendant of Gregor McGregor. This is only a glimpse into the findings of this report. There are many more examples just like it. I have included in this report as part of my submission for today's appearance. I sincerely hope that you will take the time to review the information and findings while this committee studies Bill C-53. This is why First Nations in Ontario and across Canada, the Manitoba Métis Federation, and even the governing members of the Métis National Council have all serious concerns about the MNO's claims that they represent people who come from the historic Métis communities. No MNO should be recognized in Bill C-53. And also to that, from Jean Telliott's report, who represents the firm.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. If you could wrap up the part of your opening statement, just so we can give the other chiefs their chance as
Okay,
well.
I didn't see the yellow card.
Yeah, no, it happened
Okay,
a couple of minutes
so
ago.
anyway,
Yeah.
in her report, she says Indigenous identity fraud causes harm. This is uncontested. She also goes on to say that self-declared organizations are appearing almost daily. Their existence does not, by itself, provide proof of community or Indigenous identity. And this is what we are saying.
Thank you so much, and I know it's a tight time frame. You covered a lot there, so thank you so much for that. Grand Chief Kavanagh, if you're ready to go, we'll turn the floor over to you for your 5-minute opening statement. And I'll start the clock when you're ready to start talking, so the floor is yours.
Okay. Son coming in again to go. The man do them, ni meteo, ni bagwash mo ni against the bed, was ni metiga mo. Good afternoon, members of the Standing Committee on the Indigenous and Northern Affairs. My name is Francis Kavanagh. I'm from the Notkomewaning First Nation, and I am the Ugichita, or Grand Chief of Grand Council, Treaty Number 3. I am honored to be appearing before you today to raise concerns of the Anishinaabe Nation in Treaty 3 regarding Bill C-53. Grand Council Treaty Number 3 is the traditional government of the Anishinaabe Nation in Treaty 3. This includes 26 First Nations in northwestern Ontario and 2 First Nations in southeastern Manitoba. We are a nation with a common language, Anishinaabemoin. We have a shared creation story of the larger group of Anishinaabe people living on Turtle Island that is thousands of years old, and a migration story of how we came to be a nation at the height of land where the waters flow north into the Arctic watershed. This may be as long ago as 1200 AD. There are many concerning aspects of this bill that could be discussed. My focus today is on the concerns that relate directly to Treaty 3. From our perspective, this bill must not pass. Seen in the context of previous agreements between Canada and the Métis Nation of Ontario, this bill provides a legislative pathway to reopening Treaty 3 without our involvement, let alone our consent. This bill is premised on a rewriting of history within our homeland, Manitoaki. It creates new Section 35 rights within the 55,000 square miles of Treaty 3, absent of any or factual underpinning of such bestowal. Misunderstandings of Treaty 3. We have several struggles with the Métis Nation of Ontario and their claims to represent some of the descendants of Treaty 3. These are raised in narratives around an 1875 adhesion to Treaty 3. This misrepresentation stems from a racially problematic word used to describe mixed blood Anishinaabe. I'm talking here about the term half-breed. To be clear, Treaty 3 is only between 2 peoples, the British and the Anishinaabe, in the presence of the Creator. Euro-Canadians, believing in racial superiority, described our mixed Anishinaabe akin as half-breeds only because they had the promise of white blood. British policy allowed these mixed Anishinaabe to work in fur trade posts for salaries. Fact 1, there were individuals with actual Métis cultural connection who intermarried with the Anishinaabe well after 1873. And 1873 is a key date for the Polly case developed by the Supreme Court of Canada. We have several modern-day citizens of the Anishinaabe Nation with a diversity of racial backgrounds. We are an inclusive nation and have been so because we have our own citizenship laws. Fact 2, Indian Act has caused many problems, including the issue we have today. So-called half-breeds in 1873 were affirmed as Anishinaabe in 1873 because of Treaty 3 and Anishinaabe citizenship, customs, and law. The 1875 adhesion to treaty is sometimes called the half-breed adhesion. But then the Indian Act produced non-status Indians in the 20th centuries because because of your Canadian views of caste and race and policies of enfranchisement. These colonial policies have separated our families far too long, alienating our kin who do not have status under racist and exclusionary Indian Act provisions. The Grand Council Treaty Number 3 would like to have the same powers of citizenship that we exercise since time immemorial. Contrast our long fight for self-determination with that of so-called Métis in Ontario. In the 1990s, we started seeing our Anishinaabe but non-status kin who lost status because of enfranchisement and discriminatory provisions of the Indian Act that have repeatedly been found unconstitutional, turning to Métis groups for hunting and fishing rights and belonging. If we had the means, we may have been capable of helping them with their fight for justice to keep their status and membership in our First Nations. But we did not have the means in 1990s, and our poverty forced us to be on the sidelines as these individuals fought for status and resigned themselves to use their great-grandparents' half-breed identity to belong to the Métis groups. But these so-called half-breeds were not part of a distinct Métis community. They were part of the Anishinaabe Nation as affirmed during treaty negotiations and 1873 adhesion to Treaty 3.
If you have a brief conclusion, please go to that, and then we'll hear from Grand Chief Fiddler. But please conclude.
Okay. There's no historic evidence of ever having Métis communities in our territory. Even the half-breed adhesion does not mention Métis in the adhesion. So, miigwech.
Great, thanks very much, miigwech. Grand Chief Fiddler, when you're ready, you'll have the floor as well for 5 minutes.
Miigwech. Miigwech and ticket again. Magabna Dumugant. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back here in the unceded and surrendered lands of the Algonquin Nation. My name is Alvin Fiddler. I'm the Grand Chief for the Anishinaabe Nation, one of the PTOs in what is now called Ontario. It's one of the largest PTOs in the country. It covers almost 2/3 of the province of Ontario, and there's 3 distinct languages: INAN, Cree in the eastern side, Ojibwe to the west, and Ojibwe in the central south area. I stand before you today to reiterate our position that we set out to the letter that we sent to Minister INAN Desandri, the new Saranac minister. That letter was sent out to him on October the 10th. And that letter was clear. The message in that letter was clear. It was to ask Canada to withdraw Bill C-53, and that it is reckless for Canada to rush through this legislation without meaningfully engaging with First Nations and ensuring that there is a proper basis for what Canada is doing and a thorough understanding of the consequences. Canada's current attempt to force through Bill C-53 will do nothing but damage First Nations rights for generations to come. And I am here to tell you that it is likely to cause damage to our relationship with you. The Métis Nation of Ontario has repeatedly made public statements and demands to our communities that it intends to impose itself on First Nation lands and displace our rights. Given that reality, which Canada is choosing to currently ignore, what choice will we have? Giving Aboriginal treaty rights to groups on our territories that do not have a legitimate entitlement to rights diminishes those rights. What we're asking for is transparency and meaningful consultation. We're also asking that you do proper due diligence on MNO's claims. And I just want to be very clear that we're not here to oppose the legitimate rights of the Métis people, as set out by rigorous legal tests, for example, in the Powley case. We support their aspirations in seeking to correct the historical injustices that they faced and the processes established to get there. We have no issues with that. What we are opposed to, however, are the 6 new illegitimate Métis communities in Ontario as represented by the MNO. The recognition of these communities is baseless, non-factual, and not supported by genealogical evidence. Of the 6, the Abitibi Inland Métis community, which is deemed to be situated in the Treaty 9 territory, this community does not exist. The neighboring communities and elders have never seen such a community. And I would invite you, as members of this committee and ministers, to visit this community. You will not find it. It's a fictional community, simply designed to assert rights that are non-existent. And I want to bring an elder here with me today to testify to this, but because of the short notice, he wasn't able to be here. And there are a number of things that we have issues with this bill. Number 1, the territorial rights assertion of Métis rights. Future treaties with the Métis has been discussed by ministers of this government. Undefined references to concepts such as mobility rights and activities incidental to harvesting. And just the last 15 minutes, or the 15 seconds that I have, I just want to say that I hope you read all this material that we've given to you. And I hope you recognize how colonial this is, that you're sitting up there contemplating giving recognition to another group that is not legitimate, in our view, at least the settlements that they're claiming in our territory, that we do have treaties. I brought the treaty documents with me that were signed by my ancestors and your ancestors. And that's the relationship that we want to maintain. So, miigwech, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this.
Great. Thank you so much, all of you, for your opening statements. And again, I apologize, it is rushed, but that allows us to get into the conversation now that is also so important to these hearings. I think we should be able to get through a full first round and perhaps a short second round with the time. The next panel that we have is 2 people, and so we have a bit of time to play there. So we'll jump right into it. First up with 6 minutes of time for questioning is Mr. Vidal. So when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank you all for being here today. You all have very, very significant responsibilities and roles, and it's our honor to have you here representing the people that you represent and to have this conversation. So thank you. Specifically, Ogidjita Kavanagh, I want to actually just send greetings to you from Eric Malello. He was hoping to be here today to engage with you on this and wasn't able to be here, so I just want you to know that he wanted to send greetings, or I want to send greetings on his behalf. I'm going to start with Ogidjita Kavanagh. In a May 4th press release from your office, you talked a lot, or there was quite a number of kind of elements in there about the lack of consultation, about the fact that that Chief Perot, in fact, from Couchiching, had literally written to the minister back last October and didn't even get a response. And you referred to that. You went on to talk about that as being kept in the dark. As Canada reopens our treaty, this conduct is dishonorable and completely unacceptable. I don't want to read the whole thing just in a matter of time. So just to confirm, you specifically asked the minister to engage on this and didn't even get a response. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that's true.
That's correct.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I wasn't assuming things. According to the legislative summary that's been provided by our analysts, under this framework for this bill, there's going to be no additional legislation that's needed to authorize the Governing Council to give effect to future treaties or self-government agreements with listed Métis governments. So if that's the interpretation of the legislation. So Is the fact that future treaties or self-government agreements will only require the approval of the Governing Council, which is the Prime Minister and Cabinet, not Parliament, is that a cause for concern for you based on what seems to be a broken trust at this point?
I guess the very fact that, we've asked questions, why aren't we involved in these discussions? Back in 2017, when Premier Wynne signed an agreement with the Métis, our chiefs directed me to write a letter to Canada requesting that we be involved in these discussions, but they never occurred, And over the years, last several years, we've often asked, we should be at these tables, when they're talking about acquiring rights, in our territory, and it's always been no response, and that's what really bothers us is the lack of engaging us in these discussions. And when recently, when Mark Miller was still the minister, he was asked a question regarding Métis. He walked away from the person that asked that question. He said, I don't want to be talking about this matter because they're not here to discuss. But where are we in the discussions, So that's where we're coming from.
Thank you, and I don't want to cut you off, but my time runs very quickly here, and I want to get to one more question. I'm going to go to Grand Chief Fiddler, but I want Grand Chief Hare and Chief McLeod to be ready to answer this question as well. In the information that you've provided, which you asked us to read, and I have read the information, there's talk in there specifically about the Abitibi Inland Historic Métis community, which Grand Chief Fiddler, you referred to that. And how that territory overlaps with like 9 First Nations or several nations in Treaty 9, sorry. In the material provided, you talk about the experience of damaging consequences, including the interference in treaty rights, the curtailment of harvesting rights, and the diminishment of benefits that are coming to you under impact benefits agreements. So starting with Grand Chief Fiddler, can you speak a little bit more specifically to some of those ways that you feel your rights have been impacted and has specifically already kind of been happening?
Yeah, I'll try to be as brief as I can. I mean, we can talk about this all day, just this issue alone, and that's why we're here, because it's important for us to defend our interests and our rights that we have, not just through the treaty, but our inherent rights, give it to us by our Creator. And there are some, I think, new realities now that we find ourselves in because of sort of this process that it's now in some of the agreements, for example, with on resource development agreements, that our communities are now being asked to consult with Métis groups in their region. Meanwhile, there is no one there, and to me, this shows us how absurd this is, that we're being asked to consult with people that aren't there.
Thank you, Grand Chief Hare or Chief McLeod. Grand Chief Hare or Chief McLeod, do you want to respond to that question quickly as well?
Yes. So as far as the impacts that are happening currently, that the minister keeps telling us that it's not going to impact us, but it already is, and some of those can be found as recent as several months ago. We have the MNO releasing information that they have $4.5 million that they've got for social housing in Sault Ste. Marie. They've got money for child welfare, for education. They're accepting impact benefit agreement from industry in our territories. They're also, if you're not aware of the policy of Ontario for hunting and fishing in this province, if some of these fine gentlemen to my far left here were to come into my territory, Ontario requires them to get a shipment letter that has my permission on the letter to allow them to hunt in my territory. Métis can go anywhere in Ontario and hunt, and they don't require our permission with these shipment letters.
That's, yeah, the end of the 6 minutes there. So I'm going to have to go to our next speaker, and we're going to go over to Mr. Pulowski. So when you're ready, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you all for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let me tell the others of the committee that much of my riding is the traditional territory of Treaty 3. NAN's headquarters are in my riding as well, and a lot of people from NAN communities either live part-time or full-time in Thunder Bay. The only one missing is Fort William First Nations, who I'm pretty sure has the exact same perspective on this issue. And let me say, my perspective on this bill will largely reflect what your positions are and your viewpoints on this. So I'm very eager to hear what you have to say on this. With that in mind, I have a question for Grand Chief Kavanaugh. I understand it from your opening remarks that there is a concern within the Anishinaabe Nation of Treaty 3 that the Métis Nation of Ontario has gained momentum, at least in part from the problem of non-status Indians created by the Indian Act. Essentially, that non-status individuals have been able to take on the identity of Métis in order to access rights such as hunting and fishing. Can you help me understand better how this relates to Bill C-53? And you already kind of mentioned, and am I wrong in that you seem to be saying that if you could determine your own membership, a lot of these people who are claiming to be Métis, you would rather have them back incorporated as part of Treaty 3 Nation?
Yes, miigwech for the question. There's no clear evidence, no clear historic evidence that there was a separate Métis Nation in Manitowoc. That's Grand Council Treaty Number 3. We have never known a historic and separate Métis community within Manitowoc. We have never consented to the establishment of their narrative in the 1875 adhesion. We also never consented to the Indian Act and the creation of this group of non-status Anishinaabe, some of whom found refuge and taken on a claimed Métis identity. It is important to ensure colonial laws stop acting as a means to cut off non-status individuals from rightful belonging. But Bill C-53 is not the right way to do it. In fact, it's a dangerous and unprincipled way forward. It is inconsistent with our treaty relationship, and I would say unconstitutional by Canada's standards. Those people are Anishinaabe, and in their heart and their minds will tell them this way, this is they, if they are truly Indigenous and live within the Indigenous law like we do as Anishinaabe.
Okay, so you are saying then that the people that have lost their status, who still live within the community, you would rather them be recognized as part of Treaty 3 in your community rather than as Métis?
I think so, yeah. We have the adhesion in 1875 came about because prior to the signing of Grand Council, the Treaty 3, there was actual mixed blood Anishinaabe people living amongst us, and they were part of the communities. And then after our treaty was signed, you know, our chiefs, one of our chiefs asked them to become members of the community, and that's what happened. They were absorbed into one of our communities, and because they were truly Anishinaabe, you know, they had mixed blood, but they lived the way of our people, and they practiced the way we practice our culture and traditions. And
maybe I can ask the same question of Grand Chief Fiddler. Are there people in your community who've lost their status, who maybe have declared themselves part of the Métis Nation of Ontario, and would the people you represent, the various First Nations, do you think they would prefer, rather than recognizing them as Métis, to be able to have the power themselves in order to make them citizens of your community?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't know of any specific case, but I just want to say that our communities are very welcoming. You know, when we talk about this issue, for example, you know, we do have what sort of been historically a term that's been used as half-breeds. You know, that because of the trader that came into our territories, there, you know, there's you know, there are half-breeds in our nation, but they are welcomed into our nation. Like, they become part of our nation. We're not excluding them, or we don't, you know, kick them out of our communities. They become part of our community, and that's always been our position.
Do you think First Nation communities should have the power to determine their own membership rather than being subject to the Indian Act in determining membership of your communities?
For sure.
Maybe I can ask the rest of you the same question.
But I'm the only community chief here. These guys are leaders of the political territorial organizations, and they work for us. So to answer your question, yes. We are currently, Nipissing is currently under the Anishinaabe Nation Governance Agreement, which was signed between Canada and our First Nations in our territories. 5 for First Nations, 3 more in the queue, and more coming. And literally, it speaks to what you're talking about here. It takes that band membership out of the Indian Act and places it back into our hands so we can determine who our citizens are. We are a nation. We're not an organization. And we have the right to determine who our people are, and that was taken away, which forced a lot of our people to go to these organizations to try and get some recognition of Indigenous ancestry. And what we're saying is there are some that can come to us and look for citizenship based on our laws and what we determine to be our citizens, not some foreign government to have that bestowed upon us, but rather to work with us to be able to determine who our citizens rightfully are. Miigwech.
Thank you. We'll now move to Madame Gill. Madame Gill, vous avez 6 minutes.
You have 6 minutes, Ms. Gill. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank our witnesses, Mr. McLeod, Kavanaugh, Fiddler, and Hare, who are with us from the very outset of this study. And looking at the bill, I want to say that it is a discussion that is a difficult one for all parties. Mr. Fiddler, you mentioned earlier colonialism. For example, it's quite clear that we, as members of Parliament for all of Canada, we have a specific way of looking at things, but all witnesses have brought up this lack of discussion, a lack of consultation. You have, and all witnesses have been able to bring information to the table. We have asked questions. What is your association seeking? You all say that you need more consultation. Because you weren't consulted, was there any consultation? And if there were more consultation with you, what change would be affected in terms of the resolutions? What would you recommend to this committee? Mr. McLeod and Chief McLeod, I'll ask you to answer, as well as all the other chiefs. Thank you.
So, Miigwech, and thank you for that question. So what we want to do is to be able to take the time to look at the facts and the evidence to actually determine, who are we actually speaking to? You know, currently this whole approach has been recognize first and verify later. And what we're saying is that we want to be at the table to look at who exactly we're speaking to when we talk about this legislation, because from our standpoint, you know, there's a facade of who these people represent, and some of them are, in fact, our own people. They're using our own history to basically hijack identity of a nation that never existed. Yes, there are people that with mixed ancestry. Yes, there are people connected to our nations, but that does not make them Métis. That either makes them part of the Canadian society as they live for generations, or part of ours that got disassociated with our nations, who, if can show the evidence, we would gladly entertain the citizenship within our nations.
I guess it lies with the leadership, the rights holders, and that's the chiefs of our communities who have to have the say who belongs in our communities. And I know for a fact, if it's one, it multiplies and it multiplies. I know of one who is born and raised in my community, and that person's a Métis today. No, that person is not a Métis. They belong in Chiging First Nation. So that just multiplies, and you can imagine how many times it multiplies. We support legitimate rights holders, First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. But the groups MNO represents are not legitimate. They are not. And I heard here about rights and hunting and that. Sure, and again, there's a fact where they've asked to come into a community. Chief said, no, where our reserves are small. I have enough for, well, we're coming in anyway. They are being forceful. That is not how you, whatever they want to, whatever their vision is, that's not how you get there, being forceful like that. And the thing that really hurts me as a past chief in my community, Grand Chief, and now Ontario Regional Chief, is to consult. We have a problem right now in Ontario, a big problem, because there was no consultation. We don't want to go down that road here. Common sense has to lead here, and nation to nation is our First Nations, our rights holders, to sit at the table with the government. Because I specifically asked a person from, I guess it's MNO, do you really believe you have to sit, you need to sit, when we sit and talk about funding, compensation, settlement, whatever it may be with the government, do you need to be at that table? Absolutely. Wrong answer. The history of us is with nation to nations, with the federal and provincial government. No one else. No one else. There is no proof. And all that we're asking on behalf of the leadership across the country, coast to coast, is to put this on pause. Let's sit at these tables like this and see where we can go, because we're not given that opportunity. Miigwech.
Je sais que Messieurs Kavanagh.
I know that Mr. Fiddler, Chief Fiddler, and Mr. Kavanagh will not have the time, but I would really like to have heard you on consultations and what consultations would do to make more change to the legislation.
And unfortunately, we are at the end of the 6 minutes there. So, but with that, we do invite written submissions up to 10 pages. The committee has extended the page limit to 10 pages. If you do have additional information that you would like to submit, if there's not time to speak. Oh, what's that? It's due November. Okay, and due November 17th is when written briefs need to be submitted by. We're going to go now to Ms. Idlut, who will have 6 minutes. Ms. Idlut, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. And the witnesses, thank you for being here today. What you are talking about is very important to all of us, because we are Indigenous peoples. I feel what you feel, and I understand that this is a struggle for all of us. And if our country was to be, or our lands were to be managed by other people than ourselves, it wouldn't be right. And so it is good to hear what you have to say today. as it is today, this Bill C-53 is designed to, or is proposed to, recognize the rights of the Métis Nation. The Métis Nation wants to have their rights recognized, and you as First Nations and we Inuit, we have our rights. But the First of Métis Nation wants to have the same rights as First Nations. Can you help? Can you clarify? Can you tell us if you believe that Métis Nation have their own rights? And are they included in the Indigenous people of Canada, or are they identified in the UNDRIP by United Nations? Can you please elaborate? Thank you.
That we believe that Métis people of Canada, we acknowledge their history. We acknowledge the fact that they have rights in their territories. We are saying that, but we are also saying that they weren't in our territory. That is we can't speak on behalf of the Manitoba nations. That's for them to speak on. But what we're saying is that we do recognize that Métis in Canada do have rights and do have a rich history in this country. It just didn't happen in our territories.
Glenn? Thank you. Glenn?
Well, again, it is very troublesome when we hear that the government wants to sit down and talk to the Métis about treaties. They have no land. And we've asked this over years and years. Show us this group of MNO people, where's their land? And our treaties are already made. They're historical. It really is troublesome when the government is opening them doors to them without even, again, consulting with all of us.
I'm sorry, but can you please, do you think that Métis Nation should be recognized to have rights under the UNDRIP as like Indigenous peoples?
Like I keep repeating, we need to consult each other. We need to talk about this. UNDRIP says that there must be free, prior, and informed consent for legislation impacting us. UNDRIP should apply to legitimate Aboriginal groups that exist historically and distinct nations. That is not MNO.
Francis?
I guess I don't really have nothing against half-breeds or Métis. It's what I have what I have difficulty in understanding is the why are we being left out of these discussions? It seems to be that both levels of government are enabling the Métis moving forward with signing these agreements behind our backs without our consultation and stuff like that. Also, I want to point out that rights acquired through Section 35 is not the same as rights that were confirmed at the signing of treaties. You know, they're not the same as well. You know, when Métis say they're going to be acquiring treaty rights, they're going to call their agreements a treaty. To me, that is not a treaty. It's basically a memorandum of agreement, and the memorandum of agreement is the least binding of all legal documents. So that's the problem I see. And every time we start an initiative in our territory, like say in terms of economic development, you know, our communities are unable to move forward at an expedited pace because Métis jump in and say, we need to be at that table, but they don't have any rights. They don't have a land base and this and that. So that's the problem I have. Miigwech.
Thank you. Alvin, can you also respond, please? Thank you.
I'm sorry. And so, colleagues, we're 5 minutes away from we started at 3:37. So what I'm going to suggest is we do an abbreviated second round, which would be the 5 minutes, 2.5, 2.5, and then suspend, bring in our second panel, which is only 2 people, get their opening statements. That will then give us a chance for 1 full round of questions, and that should work for today. So if that works, so we'll jump right now to who's next, Mr. Schmale. So I'll start the clock for 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for being here on this very important topic. I'm just going to pick up on the conversation. I believe Chief McLeod, you had mentioned that there are, and forgive me as we flush this all out. You listed a few examples, but in this legislation, through the line of text that we're reading, it's about the governance organization that applies to members within Métis Ontario, specifically because you're from Ontario. So am I. So in that, if I'm reading correctly, it doesn't necessarily affect you right now. Are you saying the next part is like the treaty part? Like, I just want to clarify.
I believe it's both. Looking for recognition will then lead to those other things down the road, which will impact us. But it also impacts us now, giving them recognition because they're already asserting those things. It's not about the future. This is happening now. They're getting money from the province for education. They're getting money for child welfare. They're getting housing dollars for social housing. All of that's earmarked for Indigenous people. And so what we're saying is that, this further entrenches their position and their rights to Section 35 without any due diligence, without making sure that the people that are given these rights are actually the people that deserve these rights. And some of them may, under our communities and First Nations, should be acknowledged, but to actually say under the guise of Métis people is really not the proper channel, and that even the Métis National Council are having difficulty in trying to find who exactly they represent, and as well as the Métis Federation of Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Alberta. None of these organizations, to my knowledge, recognize them as being the Métis people of Canada. And so what we're saying is that it's now, and it's also down the road. And the fight just gets harder for us down the road because it'll be recognized in Canadian law that these people, legitimate or not, are recognized as an Indigenous group in our territory.
But could we not use Pauli as one of the roadmaps here? And I'm sorry, I do have like 2 minutes left. So I have 2 more questions. Could we not use Pauli as the roadmap?
We certainly could use Pauli as the roadmap, but the MNO and their criteria are not even using the Pauli test in their membership. So let's take and pause and take that time to look at the Pauli criteria and see if it matches with the MNO criteria.
Is there any amendments that any of you at the table, including Scott, Mr. Chief McLeod, would be willing to accept to make this legislation, I guess, more acceptable to the 4 of you?
Remove MNO.
Okay. Regional Chief O'Hare, here, please.
Well, I want to read the 2 I think I need to share here. in regards to. And that is the one thing that the MNO conveniently failed to mention, and that was not brought up while they were here last week, is that the MNO has been on probation, put on probation before the Métis Nation Council for not complying with the national definition of Métis used by MNC. So it also appears as though the MNC governing members too have serious concerns about who the MNO is claiming to represent. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of serious questions that we cannot, we need to do our homework too to give you a concrete and honest answer, and we can't do that in 7 minutes.
Okay, I got like 40 seconds left.
It's even shorter.
I'll get you to Kavanaugh if you can comment.
I guess I have to say that it must not pass. Geez, pardon my losing my voice. If it becomes legislation, it allows the government to recognize, claim the Métis groups as having constitutional rights within our homelands without having to first establish the existence of a distinct historic Métis community there, and without involving us. We have lived here since time immemorial, and one of the quoted comments of our signatories to signing of the treaty said, in the words of the signatory, he said, "Creator planted us here." So much more. Planted us here is what he said. So
Okay,
I'm saying that for me, it must not pass. If they sign a treaty with them, it overlaps all of our treaties in Ontario. It will become the biggest treaty in Ontario, and that's not right.
Okay, we're out of the time on that, so now I'm going to go over to Mr. Batiste, who will have his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chiefs, for your testimony today. And this is a complicated issue. Ancestry, we know, is a complicated issue. There's no one way of determining things. And one of the things that I can share your fear. I can share, and I can hear it in your voice. As someone who's a Mi'kmaq, who comes from the peace and friendship treaties. There are those that in the Atlantic that claim that they are Métis. And they've gone to court, and they've lost because they've been unable to show that there are distinct communities in the Atlantic for the Métis. However, in Ontario, for more than 20 years, the Powley decision came from the area of Sault Ste. Marie. Now, the amendment that you've asked for is for us to exclude MNO. Are you asking us to go against what the Supreme Court of Canada has determined as a Métis community in Ontario?
So the question, and I answered that, was specific to what we could accept right now as is, which is to remove that because the due diligence has not been done. So I directly answered to that question. I didn't say that anything about the Supreme Court of Canada. But I also said that we can use the Powley test. But like the MNO currently aren't using the Powley in their own criteria of determining who a citizen is. And the Powley test was specific to a very small area, not all of Ontario. So to answer your question, yes, we can use the Powley test. And my initial response was what would I accept right now as is.
I appreciate that, Chief, and I appreciate those comments. I guess the question that follows is, do the Chiefs of Ontario accept that the Powley case was based out of Ontario and that there should be some, and I'm not saying all but is there not some reason for valid claims within the province of Ontario based on the Powley test?
I think the Powley test was through a colonial process. We're not denying that what was said, but that doesn't negate our beliefs and our knowledge of our territories. Because we weren't my community, at least, I can't speak for every community in Ontario, was not consulted in the Powley case. we had no way of actually contributing to that or arguing that. So, I mean, I acknowledge that it happened. Do I agree with what was decided? We would have to review that and look at the information and the evidence that was presented, but we can't comment on something that's been done by the Canada's court.
Thank you for that. And I've been looking at the purpose of this legislation, and when we asked all of the presidents of all of the Métis organizations that are a part of this, all of them agreed that this was not about land and resources. All of them agreed that this was not about mixed ancestry, but a distinct community. Can you show me where in the legislation that you see where it recognizes the Métis ability to assert claims to a distinct community? Anywhere in that legislation?
So I think, I mean, we're getting into semantics here by asking us those questions. Those questions should have been asked in a forum where we could actually participate in. We already know the impacts of what is happening on the ground in our territories with regards to this illegitimate recognition. So the fact that the entire legislation recognizes them to be able to govern in our territories is problematic.
I would disagree that this actually it's about internal governance, not governance of an area. But as our last question, Chiefs, would you be satisfied if we were able to put a clause in here that said that nothing in this act would abrogate or derogate away from First Nations treaties?
I think we'd be satisfied if you kill the bill. If you proceed with this bill, it will make things even more complicated, even more messy. And, you know, I didn't ask to be part of this hearing today. I was asked to come here. Well, I should have been asked a year ago. I should have been asked maybe 6 months ago. And I talked about just how colonial this exercise is. Well, it's exactly what it is. And your questions that you're asking us, well, we didn't have time to prepare those answers that we can share with you, like on the fly, here at this moment. That's why we're, you know, our regional chief referenced UNDRIP. Well, your government adopted it, but you're not following it. And that's all we're asking, is that you need to do your own homework as well, that due diligence that all of us need to do. You need to do it also.
Okay, I need to end this. We're at the end of the 5 minutes. I do want to respect Madame Gill's time and Madame Idlut's. So, Madame Gill, for your 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Chair. Given what was just said with respect to changes, and had there been consultation beforehand, it might have changed the situation. I go back to the question I asked earlier, and I would ask Mr. Fiddler, who didn't have the chance to answer, to do so now, as well as his colleague.
Yeah, thank you for your question, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to this very important issue. I don't have time to be traveling to Ottawa for rallies or for committee hearings. I was in Kingfisher Lake on Monday, where an 11-year-old girl took her life. I'm dealing with a house fire in Deer Lake, where 3 lives were lost this past week. I'm dealing with a suicide crisis, a mental health crisis, a drug epidemic. You know, those are my priorities as the Grand Chief of DAN. This is an added headache for me to try to deal with, and I hope you listen to us. I hope you read the materials, that this bill cannot proceed. We can talk about amendments, possible amendments, but I don't know where that would lead us. You know, I talked about, this is our relationship right here. You know, my father, my late father, was a witness to the adhesion of Treaty Number 9 in Big Trout Lake. That's what he talks to me about. That's our relationship between my nation and the Crown that you represent. And that's the relationship that we want to maintain. But if you want to recognize another group in our region, well, you better talk to us first. And we need to come to an agreement on how that will happen.
Chef Kavanaugh.
Chief Kavanaugh, on the issue of consultation, what would that change for you? I have a minute.
I didn't hear the last part of the question.
It's the same question that I asked earlier. You have said on several occasions that you would have liked to have been consulted beforehand. So I'm asking you, if you had been consulted beforehand, what would be the result in your eyes? How could this improve what we have?
I'm not quite sure how I would answer that question, but I just want to say that if they're considering establishing a self-government agreement with the Métis MNO, we have a process we call the Bimiyanitizuin Omaking. That's self-government on our own territory. We had discussions that were not terminated but suspended over 20 years ago. If we had not been suspended, we would be enjoying the benefits of self-government in our territory. But now, government is expediting the process to give another group self-government. The discussions that I'm talking or referring to is during the time of Bob Nault, you know. So why now? Why are you going to provide a self-government agreement to another group beside us? I don't understand that.
Thank you. We're going to have to move to our final round of questions with Ms. Itlut. The floor is yours for 2.5 minutes.
First, I want to apologize because I think you will walk out of here angry or frustrated because what we are dealing with here is very hard. We are members of the MP now, and we have to comply with what's put or deal with what's put in front of us. Now, it's been many years since this has been put on the table. You may think that we are not hearing you, but we are hearing you, and what you have stated will have an impact in the outcome. The last question I want to pose to Alvin is, we as Indigenous people need to stand with solidarity. We have been colonized by Canada. We have been put into communities. And in that regard, we have to stand together. Inuit, First Nations, and Métis. How would you like to see this? How would you perceive solidarity moving forward, or moving forward with solidarity?
We have solidarity. We've always been supportive of the legitimate claims of whether it's the Inuit or the Métis. What we have problems with, and we've been very clear in our letters and our rallies and our appearance here today, is the illegitimate claims made by groups that purport to have communities in our region. You know, our elders and it's spelled out in my letter. If we had known there was another group of people in our region, we would have seen them. We would have seen their fire. We would have seen their camps. We would have seen their tracks. But they're not there. And yet they claim to have, what do they call it? What's that word? Neo-historic communities? I don't even understand what that means. So how can something be new and historic at the same time? Doesn't make sense. Maybe it does make sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to us. And that's what we have problems with. But in terms of solidarity, for sure, absolutely. I will come to your region anytime. If you have a problem, an issue with anyone, I'll be there. And I say that with other groups in the country, the Métis, or whether it's in BC or in the East Coast, we've done it. We've shown our support, whether it was our brothers and sisters in the Atlantic when they were fighting with the racists that were trying to harm them while they were exercising their right to harvest fish. We talked to the leadership. We showed our solidarity with them, and we will do that anytime.
Thank you. We are out of time now. We do have another panel that we need to hear from, but I do want to thank all four of you for being here, for sharing your thoughts. It is an interesting and a challenging discussion that we're having, and so I do appreciate your insights. And thank you for making time to be here with us today and for sharing your very important insights. So thank you. With that, colleagues, we're going to suspend to bring in our next panel. colleagues, welcome back for our second panel. And joining us today online, we have Grand Chief Catherine Merrick from the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Welcome, Grand Chief Merrick. And in the room, we have Mr. Jason Batiste, Executive Director with the Waban Tribal Council. We'll get right into the opening statements. We have 5 minutes, and if I don't know if you saw, I'll give you a 30-second warning with the yellow card and time's up with the red card, but please don't stop mid-sentence, finish your thought. We have lots of questions and discussion to get through, and it's a bit of a rigid process, so please bear with us as we get through it. I always like to start with our online witnesses while we have you properly connected. So Grand Chief Merrick, when you're ready, the floor is yours for your 5-minute opening statement.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank the members of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs for the opportunity to speak to you on the subject matter of Bill C-53. In my presentation today, I will discuss the impact of Bill C-53 on First Nations individual and collective rights. Through my remarks, I wish to convey the tremendous concern that First Nations in Manitoba have about the federal government's disregard for the inherent and treaty rights of First Nations. Given time restraints, I will refer you to my written brief for additional concerns about the bill's adherence to the principles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Prior to European contact, First Nations existed on the lands now known as Canada since time immemorial, with our own unique laws and rights derived from the Creator. First Nations in Manitoba have since exercised their own sovereignty alongside the Crown's assumed sovereignty through negotiated treaties and in respect of our sovereign nationhood. Métis people, many of whom are our relatives, arose after contact with the Europeans. Unlike First Nations, they had not existed on these lands since time immemorial with their own laws and nationhood. Accordingly, the Supreme Court of Canada has acknowledged the distinction between First Nations and Métis Section 35 rights, further details of which are also provided in my written brief. In proposing Bill C-53, your government is supporting Métis colonization and continuing a long history of ignoring First Nation rights. Bill C-53 is simply another method by which the Canadian government continues the colonization project against First Nations. Any claim that Bill C-53 will not impact First Nations' rights is incorrect in two respects. First, the overly broad characterization of Métis rights set out in precursor agreements that will be recognized by Bill C-53 reference a historic Métis Nation homeland, which includes all the land that is now Manitoba. This has potential to unjustly recognize Métis as right holders in First Nations treaty and traditional territories where they have no connection or rights. All First Nations in Manitoba has entered into treaty with the Crown, which are the numbered treaties or pre-Confederation treaties entered into with the Dakota Nations. A key component of the numbered treaties were the solemn commitment to set aside reserve lands for the exclusive use and benefit of First Nations, and the right to harvest on treaty territories. To this day, the Crown's treaty obligation to set aside reserve lands for First Nations in Manitoba remains unfulfilled. First Nations continue to have difficulty or are prohibited from exercising their full treaty harvesting rights. Bill C-53 will impede the ability of First Nations to have their treaty obligations fulfilled. Even before treaties are made with the Métis, they are standing in the way of First Nations treaty fulfillment. This is evidenced by the action brought against Canada in 2021 by the Treaty Land Entitlement
Grand
Committee.
Chief Merrick, we've lost the sound quality for a second there. We just need to give it a second and see if it'll stabilize for the interpreters. Can you try another check. I've paused the clock, and so we're just going to see if we can check to make sure that we can hear. Okay, because interpreters have your written statement, they will be able to finish this part, but it's going to be very challenging. They may not be able to interpret the discussion, and that becomes an issue for us. But I'll let you continue with a minute and a half left in the clock for your opening statement, and then we'll see where that will go to Mr. Batiste, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. So please continue.
Okay, even before treaties are made with the Métis, they are standing in the way of First Nations treaty fulfillment. This is evidenced by the action brought against Canada in 2021 by the Treaty Land Entitlement Committee on behalf of the Treaty Land Entitlement First Nations regarding the significant delays caused by Canada's decision to consult with the Métis before adding land to First Nation reserves. Crown land selections, including Westway CP for First Nations Crown land parcels, have been held up by the Métis claim of land use. If treaties are made with the Métis, there will be further conflict. Second, Bill C-53 may impact First Nations rights through the attempt to legislate the recognition of treaties which have not yet been entered into with Métis collectives. Several First Nations in Manitoba have traditional territories that span into what is now Ontario and Saskatchewan. True provinces directly contemplated by Bill C-53. Provincial boundaries have been established in an arbitrary manner that does not consider First Nations sovereignty and land rights, which long predate the creation of Canada and its provinces. First Nations have received no indication from Canada that our voices will be heard in the development process of proposed Métis treaties to ensure that they have not infringed on First Nation rights. Lack of future First Nations consultation is likely given that there will be no consultation with First Nations in Manitoba in relation to the Red River Métis Treaty. This has not happened to this day. As I speak, there was never any consultation to any of the PTOs in the province of Manitoba. First Nations in Manitoba have been waiting for more than a century to have our treaties respected, honored, and implemented by Canada. As our treaty partner, Canada should be focused on fulfilling its outstanding promises rather than entering other treaties without our knowledge and consent. Until our sacred treaties are fully honored, no other group should trust that Canada will honor any new treaties. For these reasons, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs strongly oppose Bill C-53. We ask you, our treaty partner, to ensure that Bill C-53 is not passed.
Thank you so much for your opening comments. And we'll jump right now to Mr. Batiste for your opening statement.
Yes, good afternoon, committee, and thank you for accepting my application to speak today. My name is Jason Batiste. I'm the Executive Director of the Waban Tribal Council in Timmins. I represent 6 First Nations in northeastern Ontario. I'm here today because Canada hasn't consulted about Bill C-53 and told us it was none of our business. The impacts to our land and our way of life make it our business. Legitimate Métis groups should have their rights protected, but this is not what this bill does. The bill does open the door for a wave of illegitimate claims to alleged Métis rights across Ontario. The focus of the Waban Tribal Council and our communities is on protecting our people and their lands where we have occupied since time immemorial. One of the key ways that Waban communities have been doing that is through economic development and reconciliatory action with industry. We are probably subject to the most intensive exploration and mining activity in the country. We have currently 10 operating mines operating within our traditional lands, with 3 new mines now in development. We also deal with over 80 million development exploration permits on a daily basis. In Waban territory, we've created a model that works for both First Nations industry and provides benefits for our communities and for all Ontarians. Bill C-53 will severely disrupt our relationship with industry by allowing M&O to create illegitimate communities with Section 35 rights on our territory. Illegitimate groups that are already demanding industry pay them for impacts to our land. Aboriginal rights do not exist in the abstract. They are tied to the land. Canada should not be creating a treaty process for entities that don't have legitimate entitlement. The claim that there are powerly compliant communities in Ontario is ludicrous. M&O keeps repeating the mantra that it has powerly compliant independent registry processes. That's false. It can't comply with PALI because those alleged historic communities never existed. Bill C-53 would recognize the alleged Métis communities in our territory as being Section 35 rights holders, but we know they aren't. We know this because it's our land. We've been here for thousands of years, but we also know because we did the research. We hired leading experts to examine the claims of the group in our territory, and what it shows very clearly is that the claims of the M&O communities in the Waban Territory are simply false. We forwarded it to the committee, but you can also find it on our website. We have nothing to hide. The Red River Métis have called these new M&O communities fraudulent, fabricated, and are not part of the Métis Nation. So it's not just us that are saying so. It's the Métis Nation of Manitoba and the Red River people. The Métis Nation Council itself is starting an expert panel process to investigate the legitimacy of these M&O claims. We as First Nations know everything about our lands. It is not credible that we never noticed there were a whole group of other distinct people, Indigenous people, living where we live. We cannot understand why Canada is dismissing First Nations concerns. Canada refuses to talk to us meaningfully or to disclose any information about the legal basis for the bill. We also have concerns about the way the bill is drafted. If you look at Section 8 and the schedule of the bill, there is no definition, apparent restriction, or clarity on the Métis collectivity being recognized in Ontario other than M&O gets to decide. This is not like giving First Nations control over our membership, which we don't have. It's like giving the AFN or the Chiefs of Ontario the power to unilaterally create new First Nations. Canada brushes off our concerns with a, don't worry about it, this is just internal matters. The bill creates a treaty process for M&O. This is about land. M&O's representatives have looked me right in the eye and told me that the land next to my hometown, my home community in Matachewan First Nation was theirs. They challenged us on our treaty land entitlement claim and asked us to allow them to use our land because it was theirs. M&O has already been making aggressive demands in our territory, attempting to delay projects where we already have consented to in order to extract outrageous demands for benefits agreements from industry. Margaret Froese on record as saying that there can be no electricity transmission development in Ontario without equity participation from M&O. The long-term consequences of this bill will be catastrophic for our communities and for industry. Once M&O has a legal platform, there will be a massive increase in the financial burden on industry of both the cost of doing consultation with an illegitimate group, the cost of accommodating M&O's demands, and the likelihood of extensive litigation by M&O. Canada is sowing the seeds of generations of an unnecessary conflict by refusing to consult with us. Canada has not thought through the consequences of this. If our treaty partner thinks it can unilaterally change the promises it made to us in Treaty Number 9 and give away rights to an illegitimate group, then you have another thing coming. You don't understand what you're doing, and we implore you to pause this legislation and talk to us about it. Miigwech.
Thank you for those opening statements. Colleagues, we'll get right now into our one round of questioning. That's all we'll be able to get through is 6 minutes for each member. The challenge we're having with Grand Chief Merrick's audio, we'll have to see. I'll keep my eye on the interpreters. If it doesn't, if we can't hear, I would ask for the Grand Chief to perhaps keep track, or we can send out the questions and get a written statement back from those questions if we're unable to engage, but we can at least pose the questions to her. So we'll see how it goes. So up first, I have Mr. Vidal splitting his time with Mr. Schmale.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank both of our witnesses in this panel for appearing today. We do appreciate your time and your passion for the challenge we face. Mr. Batiste, I talked to Grand Chief Fiddler about this in the last hour, but I want to pursue it with you as well. The Abitibi Island Historic Métis Community Territory claim is by far the MNO's largest, covering a vast stretch of land approximately the size of New Brunswick. You provided us this map showing the overlap of the different territories, and there's several First Nations within that territory. As a result of the 2017 recognition by the Province of Ontario, First Nations in the region of the MNO's claim have experienced damaging consequences, including, that's the claim in the documentation you provided to us. And so my question for you is actually quite simple. Can you give some very specific examples of the three items that you talk about: interference by the MNO in the exercise of their treaty and inherent rights, particularly during treaty land entitlement, the curtailment of harvesting rights, and the diminishing of benefits to which they're entitled under impact benefit agreement? Can you briefly give me kind of a couple of specific examples that would hit those things that were in your brief?
Like our friends from the Grand Chief from Manitoba, we were made to consult with the Métis Nation of Ontario on our treaty land entitlement that was right beside our reservation. Land adjacent, it couldn't be more simple. 4 more square miles adjacent to the nation, kind of in the remote part of northeastern Ontario. 2 years it took us, almost 3, to get through a consultation, a useless consultation exercise with an illegitimate group that had no presence in that area. So they did hold up a 100-year-old, 120-year-old treaty promise that was left out of our treaty entitlement. On the mining side, just 2 weeks ago, talking with the executives from Newmont, the Timmins local Métis Nation of Ontario representatives told Newmont that they would not approve their tailings dam lift, which was an environmental disaster waiting to happen, unless they got an agreement. So not only did they interfere in the agreement that we already have with Newmont, but they're also endangering the environment in favor of economic benefit. And if you want to learn more about that, I invite you to talk to the folks and the executives at Newmont Mining. And finally, as more and more of these members, these illegitimate members, show up in our territory, there are less animals. They are everywhere. They hunt without regard with respect to our treaty rights. And I know folks, I live beside them, I know these MNO folks that carry the cards. They do it, and they do it all the time, and they do it with impunity. And it's not right. That was promised to us in our Treaty Number 9. That game, those animals, those belong to the folks, my ancestors. Nobody else. Nobody else. And they are not legitimate. We've done the research.
Thank you. You did a very good job of splitting my time, but my colleague is saying, go ahead, Gary, keep going. So, Chair, I'm going to keep going. Mr. Batiste, you made a very bold statement, and this has been something that's been debated at this table over the last couple of weeks about this is about land, you said. And we've had many discussions with many witnesses about the fact that there's nothing in the legislation that would specifically reference land. You made a very bold statement. I want you to just take a moment to expand on why you obviously believe very strongly that this is about land and how this legislation links to that outcome in the longer term.
Ignoring all the myriad of examples I could give you on what's going on today with the interference of mining companies, with the interference of our treaty rights to harvest, the bill itself, the title of the bill says it's to give effect to treaties with those governments. What does that mean? I know what a treaty means. We have Treaty Number 9. That means land. So don't tell me it doesn't. I'm not buying it. It's right in the title and mentioned at least a dozen times throughout the bill. Treaty, 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 treaty. You're talking to a treaty Indian. And if it wasn't, that's my land. So there is no possible way that this is just about internal governance matters, about just the administration. If folks want to meet and they're like-minded and they meet somewhere, fine, have at it. But this is about the places of the traditional folks of Treaty Number 9. The Abitibi homeland of the Métis does not exist, never did. It's not a historic community. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm just going to quickly jump in here and build on what Mr. Vidal was talking about. To your point, would the potential treaty process that were to take place should this legislation pass. Would you, right now, according to our reading, it's could be approved by an order in council. Would a amendment to have it voted on in Parliament after the fact be more acceptable to you, so that the process or the final decision is more, or is clear, I guess? Yeah.
I suppose if there's more veracity and investigation in their process, that's better. Do I accept that Canada's going to do right by the Treaty 9 nations, by Matachewan? I don't. I think that the bill needs to die. I think it needs to go away. But if there's ways that we can work together to amend it through consultation, then let's get at it. We haven't been consulted to this point, as many of my colleagues have said. Do I think that it should just go to a small committee in the back room? Like most of it's been done by, we've had to file Freedom of Information Acts just to learn what's going on, and we've been denied. We've spent $500,000 through our little tribal council trying to get at why this bill is, and nobody wants to tell us. Nobody wants to tell us a thing. The government is protecting the information under cabinet privilege. Imagine that, treaty partner. Why don't you? Why is it so?
That's interesting.
Why is it so secret? What's the gig? Why is the secret?
Okay, we're going to have to end there and go to Mr. McLeod, who is next on my list for his 6 minutes. So, Mr. McLeod, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to ask if both witnesses are available for questioning.
You try, and we'll see what the sound quality is, and if we can't get a response from Grand Chief Merrick, we'll ask for a written statement.
Well, I'll start with Mr. Baptiste. I come from Northwest Territories, and I've worked with Indigenous people my whole life. I'm Indigenous. I'm part of the land claim process, and I fully understand the treaties. I've heard all my life about how the treaties are peace and friendship agreements and intended to allow us to coexist. And I've heard about the Métis signing the Métis script. In fact, my grandfather signed the script. And I know the challenges that all Indigenous people face trying to get justice and trying to get these agreements honored. But Mr. Baptiste, I hear you saying this is a legitimate claim, and they're not, the Métis in the Ontario region are not legitimate. Could I ask you if you could tell us if you believe that the Métis have rights as nations across the country? I heard you mention the Métis on Manitoba not recognizing the people and the Métis people in Ontario.
As I said in my opening statement, we recognize and affirm that there are Métis nations. There are Métis rights, Section 35 rights. They have those in their homelands, in their places. I'm here to tell you it's not Ontario. I'm here to say it's not in Matachewan. I'm here to say it's not in Treaty Number 9. I'm here to tell you that it's not the Abitibi homeland. It's not the entire width and breadth of the province of Ontario as the Métis Nation of Ontario would like it to be. So, it shouldn't be incumbent on me to tell you where they are or how they came to be. You should do that research yourself. We did. We filed it. We sent it. We begged folks to read it. We came to Parliament Hill and we pleaded. Pay attention. And so I have no doubt that there are legitimate Métis people in this country. And I have no doubt that the nations where they're neighboring in Manitoba, that they've got peace and friendship agreements and that they're getting along just fine. But that's not where I am. That's not the Métis Nation of Ontario. Don't be fooled. It's not.
So thank you for that. I want to ask you if there is any type of process that would satisfy you that these people in Ontario that are claiming to be Métis have a claim. Is there a process through the Powley process, the Powley case, if the due diligence was done? I know in other regions where land claims are being negotiated with Métis, land claims are being negotiated with the Dene and the Métis together. And the enrollment process is very stringent. it takes years and years and tracking of family history and origins. Is there anything that would satisfy you that there is a legitimate claim happening here in Ontario?
I would like to think that I'm a reasonable person and that an avenue to a discussion on what's real and what's not real is a way forward. But it can't be this bill. It can't be just the open acceptance of a broad Métis Nation in Ontario. It's not that. First, you have to do the homework. As Chief McLeod had mentioned, find out who you're talking about first. You know, a lot of the people on that list, and if you read our research, they're former chiefs of our communities and their descendants. And I'm not talking 100 years ago. I'm talking people from 50, 60 years ago, people that I knew that are passed on to the spirit world. They're claiming them as Métis people, and yet they were chiefs of First Nation communities. So how does this circle get squared? And do you want to talk about that first and then decide whether or not, A, it's legitimate, and B, if it is, then how do we deal with it? And if it's Powley, if that's the test, as my good friend Scott McLeod had said, let's deal with that. Let's talk about Powley. Let's talk about the small community in Sault Ste. Marie. Small. And then taking that small community and suggesting that it's all of Ontario. Because that's exactly what's happened. A tiny, tiny group of Métis people who have proved their rights in Sault Ste. Marie, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. And I don't get it. And my father, 85-year-old elder from our community, was asked, were there any Métis people? Do you remember them? My dad speaks Ojibwe Indian fluently. He has no clue what we're talking about. None at all. And I wish you'd ask him. He couldn't be here today. He wanted to be.
I have one more question if I have time. I heard you mention impact benefit agreements and resource development. How much does that whole concept of resource sharing or resource development, impact benefit agreements play into what you're talking about?
Let's call it Indigenous pie to go around from any industry. And if you're giving it to illegitimate groups, that takes it from me. As the justice said in Quebec in their recent decision in Maniwaki, and the one in Ontario, you can't take from one and give to another without a reduction. There's going to be an impact. So if you take from the Aboriginal pie and you give it to an illegitimate group or some other group of folks that are claiming to be Indigenous from my area, that means I get less. And that's not okay.
Okay, thank you. We're going to jump to Madame Gill, who has 6 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have several questions for Ms. Méric and Mr. Baptiste. I'll start with Mr. Baptiste. Thank you, first of all, for being here. I will ask 3, and if you don't have the time to answer, perhaps you could do so in writing. You speak often of legitimacy. I would like to know, because earlier in the first hour, we also heard testimony with respect to that, with respect to the Powley ruling, that decision. People mentioned legitimacy. And of course, you're saying that the government is wrong. I'm going at this subjectively. You're saying the government's making a mistake bringing in this bill. So how did it make that mistake with respect to the bill? And I would also like to hear you on equity and fairness that you mentioned on several occasions today. Fairness in terms and equity in terms of the First Nations for those concrete rights that the First Nations hold as to land. But let me just start off by asking you to speak to legitimacy, Mr. Baptiste.
Somebody in this room should have maybe done the work that we did and not relied on the very nation that's trying to get forward. Right? They're going to tell you whatever it takes, they'll tell you to get where they need to go. Can't blame them for that. Can't blame them for that. They're advocating for their own thing. So we did our own research on the Abitibi homeland. The little Waban Tribal Council spent about $250,000 with academic experts examining their own registry of where they're saying the Métis people in our area are from. And it turns out they're not from there. It turns out we did an examination of 22 of their executives and the ones that are in where they say the Abitibi homeland. Not one of them is from there. So how do they get rights there? They can have rights somewhere else, I suppose, if they're from the Red River. But how do they become land-bearing right holders in Timmins and Matachewan, where I'm from? Makes no sense. So that's what I'm talking about, legitimacy. I'm not talking about folks, the Métis folks that are the rights holders in Manitoba and where they're from. I'm talking about when they try to make connections of half-breeds through a twist and some fallacies about examining historical records and cherry-picking. Absolutely cherry-picking. Half-breed, me. Even though it says Ojibwe underneath, half-breed must be Métis. It's there for you. We provided that to the committee. I hope that you read it because it's absolutely a revealing read. I couldn't believe it when I read it myself. So, and the Robinson Huron work confirmed and it goes into a little bit more depth than the work that we did. So we know that the claims are not legitimate.
I'm just waiting for the end of the interpretation. I don't want to stop you, but you say that it's up to the government to establish legitimacy. The government has to do its homework. Is that what you're saying? The government has to do its homework.
Yeah, the government has no qualms about telling me who I am. It has no qualms about creating an Indian Act and telling my grandkids 2 or 3 generations down the road, sorry, you don't belong anymore. So you have no problem making that assumption or making that assessment. But with the Métis Nation, oh no, you just go ahead. You decide whoever you are, whoever you want to be, we'll take your word for it. So how does that add up? And so, yes, Canada should look at it. You do it already. You do it to every First Nation every day, all day. And now you're changing. To me, this is a game changer. You're giving something to somebody else that you're certainly not willing to give to us. And I'll finish with this. Minister Miller, before he left Cabinet, told the Chiefs of Ontario that he knew the Indian Act was a racist document with respect to membership. He knew it. So I challenged him. I said, well, change it. You're the minister. Change it. You're willing to change it for the Métis. You're willing to let them self-identify, whatever that means. But here we sit, and I've got grandkids that are going to not be able to be members of Matachewan no more because of that legislation that Canada put forward. So I dare say that you're good at assessing things.
I would have a last question. I didn't think about asking it, but it just arises from your statement. You referred to a document that was not public and which might change the course of events. From that perspective, I have no idea what you're talking about. I would like, though, to know what you were referring to and what would you like to see as a possibility of looking at those documents and what they would change.
Oh, no, my apologies. If we're referring to the research that we did on the homeland, the Abitibi homeland, it's absolutely public.
No, you spoke, and here, I hope I'm not wrong, you said that there was information that was held back by the minister or by the department, and you thought that would change the course of events, perhaps, and that would change the whole situation. Can you just explain?
So through our legal counsel, we sued under the Freedom of Information Act to understand what's the background research to an understanding why M&O is what they claim, and how did Canada come to the conclusion? What evidence did you rely on? What was presented to you? Because we did our own. So can we see it? And the answer was no. You can't have it. It's cabinet privilege. You can't see it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Idlut, we'll go to you now for your 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank the witnesses and it's just unfortunate that there's some audio problems with the other witness. Jason, I want to ask you, about 1990, the Royal Commission in the Indigenous for the Indigenous peoples, were they also participants in the legitimation of rights? I'm sorry, I didn't mean rights. Do you think that the Royal Commissions were involved in legitimizing Indigenous peoples?
Referring to the 1990 Commission. All I can say is I'm sure the Commission was well intended to recognize legitimate Métis and First Nation peoples, Inuit peoples. I'm sure that was the intent. I'm here to tell you that what's going on in Ontario is not that. And so there are things in the Commission that are very good, and I'm sure it's well intended. And I'm here to tell you that I respect legitimate rights holders, Métis, Inuit, First Nations. I do.
The Royal Commissions that we are referring to have said that in Ontario, the Métis nations have been legitimized as Indigenous. What do you think about that?
They're referring to Pauli because there were none that were recognized officially before Pauli, and that was done through the Supreme Court. So before Pauli, there were no recognized Métis communities in Ontario that I'm aware of. And Pauli was the first and still the only, and it's a small place near Sault Ste. Marie. And since then, the Pauli has been abused, in my view, to legitimize the MNO assertions over the rest of Ontario. They're not using Pauli. They're not. They're simply not. I don't know what the benchmarks are, but it ain't Pauli.
Could you please tell us what was determined in the Supreme Court? How does that pertain to Pauli? Because you mentioned Pauli.
A small community near Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, of distinct Métis people. That's what it decided. Near Sault Ste. Marie, in a small place. Not near Matachewan, because if they were there, we'd have known them. The same way if they were in Inuit lands, you would know it. My father, who is an elder, cannot describe distinct Métis people from, and Chief Fiddler, and our communities are very remote, extremely remote. Remote northern Ontario, where you have to fly in 200 kilometers on an airplane, Métis people, the Métis Nation of Ontario, claims that as their land. Just look at the map. It doesn't lie. And you can't get there but for an airplane. So how did they historically occupy that place? How did they get there? They can't. It's absurd. It's absurd.
And lastly, I just want to draw your attention to this. The Royal Commissions amongst the Indigenous people brought about Pauli. Now the Ontario government have stated that they recognized the Métis Nation as Indigenous peoples after they did a study or a research for 10 years. And they did this research for 10 years. Now, the Pauli was mentioned in the Supreme Court, and under this statement, it is said that they recognize Métis Nations as Indigenous. How do you understand Pauli?
Dan Pauli is a small community of Métis people living near Sault Ste. Marie. That's how I understand Pauli.
10 seconds. That's good. Okay. Good. Well, you know what? We're at the end of the time for witnesses. Grand Chief Merrick, I apologize that we weren't able to engage you in the discussions, but if there is anything from the conversation, please feel free to write your responses and give them to us. We obviously wanted to hear from you, and it was just the audio prevented the issue. So please feel free to give us your thoughts in writing. And Mr. Batiste, thank you for joining us in person today. Colleagues, just before we adjourn, I do have two very quick items I need committee direction on. So the first is that
Can you call back your troops?
No, well.
Easy,
First item is that through our agreement that we have, each group is allowed 2 witnesses. The Manitoba Métis Federation is scheduled to appear on Tuesday. They have asked to bring a 3rd witness in person with them. And they said that this person would share the 5-minute opening statement. Our routine motion only provides for 2 witnesses, and this is in part because of the financial impacts. We are going to have to go to the sub-liaison committee for justification on our budget, which is over what we normally get for a study. And so this would further increase that budget, but it would also be inconsistent with other organizations where we've limited them to 2. And so, and just given the nature of the study, where there are lots of people and lots of organizations that would like to put forward their opinion, it would be inconsistent in the message we've given to other witnesses. But I would like to know from the committee if we should consider the request for a 3rd or hold them at the 2 as we have other organizations. So any direction that you'd like to give on that? Jaime and then Jamie.
You know, we heard from chiefs today that they would have liked to bring more people, their elders, if they could have. I just think that if we've made the rules and we've stuck to them thus far, you know, that's what we should stick with, the consistency throughout the legislation.
Jamie?
Yeah, I respect the sensitivity of this. I defer to Jaime and Laurie on this. Is there the remote option as a possibility if we wanted to get in there? I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but...
Yeah, and I asked that question. The issue is that even with that, we have held others to 2, and so this would be opening.
Then I defer to the sensitivity.
Yes, Laurie, if you'd like to weigh in, and Marilyn.
What's that?
Marilyn?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. En fait,
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Mr. Batiste has said. We should change the rules in midstream in terms of fairness. So I certainly understand that there are some other people that would love to appear as well, but I would prefer to see us remain with 2. Thank you.
Laurie?
I'm of a different view of Jaime. If the First Nations chiefs if we had been given more witnesses that they submitted, I would have been okay to have them appear. We're being asked formally, and in each session we're usually good with 3 witnesses, and if on that day we only have 2 anyway, then we'd have that time for the 3rd.
Just to clarify, we do have more than the Manitoba Métis Federation. It actually gets into my next question. We would have 2 organizations on that panel, and then 2 or 3 on the next one with 1 individual for each. So it wouldn't be that it would only be, it would add us then up to probably 4 witnesses for that panel. And so it would be Manitoba Métis Federation with 2 witnesses and a 3rd one. So that's kind of the issue. It's not that there would only be 1 panel with just the 1 organization and 3 witnesses. So just
You know how sometimes when one witness appears, but then they have support staff? Is that what they're asking, is to have a support staff to help them answer questions?
No, they have asked specifically for an elder to also join them, so it would be a different kind of perspective that they would be bringing.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the challenge. They have decided on the other two members that they would have come. And so it does put us in a bit of an inconsistent position with what we've communicated to other witnesses. Marilyn.
Thank you. I think that Mr. Carr here wanted to speak, but clearly it's the committee that will decide. But we've had a number of requests to hear elders, but I think it has to be fair that we hear each of the groups. I know that there is a limited amount of time to complete the study, but I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Mr. Carr.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted, if we're going to talk about this any further, it may be advisable to do it in camera. I just think that having discussions of this nature that aren't in camera kind of fall out of scope of regular discussions about committee business. So if we haven't yet reached in a moment or so a conclusion, I may suggest we go in camera for this.
Fair comment. The issue is that we are past our resources. To go in camera, we need to send out new links, and that takes some time. And I was
sorry,
hoping,
John, I missed that.
Yeah, no, that was the only. I just. But you're right. It is a sensitive discussion, and the second point related to Tuesday is also a sensitive one that probably would be done more appropriately in camera. But you know what? I think I've heard enough that I'll take this. And the second question was just about the composition of the panels for Tuesday, given the sensitivity. But I'll work with our analyst team to resolve that, and we will get the notice of motion out to you. And that is what we'll do for the notice of meeting. Yeah, notice of meeting, not notice of motion. Notice of meeting. And and with that, we'll adjourn and wish everybody a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Meeting adjourned.